Hey everybody, I have a special guest on today's masterclass named Gino Wickman. He's the author of Traction, the founder of the EOS model, and it's a really fun episode that we recorded that I really felt like I wanted to show you guys the video. Now, we had a little technical difficulty with the internet on top of the mountain going down, so bear with us, but I hope you enjoy it. Hey Gino, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here, Jason.
Awesome. So for the people that have been under a rock for a while and have not heard of what you've done and the books that you've read or written, tell us who you are and what do you do?
Well, in a nutshell, I am a guy who obsesses about helping entrepreneurs maximize their freedom, creativity, and impact. And so for the last 30 years, I have obsessed about what makes entrepreneurs successful, businesses successful. I've written lots of books around it. And to date, we've helped about 100,000 companies and entrepreneurs build amazing companies.
Awesome. It's like deja vu right now. for anybody listening, we had to start over. I haven't had to do that in a while just because the internet cut out, but we'll be good. So when you were 25, you took over a family business.
Yes.
And you turned that around.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the things that you did? Because there's a lot of people right now that they're thinking about like, how can I scale? How can I grow my agency? Maybe they inherited an agency in a business. What did you do? What were some of the things that you did?
Yeah, well, some of the biggies, because there was a lot, I mean, there were probably 200 things I did, but as I think about the biggies, and again, looking back almost 30 years ago, one was I really simplified the business. So the business was literally in 5 different businesses. And so my dad and his partners just found themselves, they were incredibly successful. And sometimes that success gets you in trouble. And so they found themselves in distribution, a couple other training programs they created. And so what I had to do first and foremost was kind of spin off those other business units and get the business back to its core. And so that was step one, simplifying the business, getting back to our core. Number 2 is I literally went out and had our team go out to every single client and win them back, because unfortunately we got a little cocky during that growth period. And so we won them back. And then I would say the third big thing was restructuring the organization. It was just a mess. It was 50 people tripping all over themselves. And so it was taking a big step back, what I now call an accountability chart, just basically an org chart on steroids, if you will, but took a big step back and thought about what the right structure for the organization was, then kind of shuffled people around, got them all in the right seats. Certainly had to fire and lay off and, remove people from the organization once it was simplified. And then from there, it was just 3 years of digging out of deep, ugly debt, selling our asses off, and just kind of regrowing the business again. So those were the biggies, and then a whole bunch of small things.
Awesome. When you took over the business, did they have a really defined kind of vision, or did they have that clarity of where they're going? Or was it like a lot of those businesses out there that are kind of reactionary because they were accidental businesses or agency owners?
Yeah, great question, because the reality was, so it was 3 partners, one of which was my dad. And when I took over, I replaced one of the partners who was the president of the organization. So to answer your question, there actually was a very clear vision in my dad's head. And so in the midst of all that murkiness and that incredible success that they had, I was just able to pull that vision out of his head. And so it had core values, which he called his philosophies. It had a huge overriding BHAG, if you will, 10-year target. And so again, it was all there. And I just had to kind of chisel away all the confusion and put a light on that vision that my dad always had in his head. So the beauty was, what helped me turn it around was his vision was so clear in his mind. It was just pulling it out of his head and getting it in everyone's head going forward. So it was there. It was just very, very confusing, and not everyone was on the same page.
So a lot of businesses are actually going through this, right? Mm-hmm. They kind of have this in their head, but they can't get it out. And it's kind of like what I've been doing this spring of like, I have these beautiful trees, but all these weeds are like growing up around them, and I have to kind of hack through them, right?
Exactly.
So
right.
What were some of the things that you did, or what are some things that people can do in order to be able to see those trees?
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And again, these tough times are opportunities to do exactly what you're saying. A lot of pruning, a lot of cleaning up, a lot of clarifying. As I'm saying in a lot of these podcasts, I'm reminding everyone of something my business mentor taught me, and that's the 10-year business cycle, which is in a 10-year business cycle, this happens every 10 years. You're going to have 2 great years. You're going to have 6 good years, and you're going to have 2 terrible years that could potentially put you out of business. And my mentor taught me that 30 years ago, and it's happened every 10 years in those last 30 years. And it's happened the previous, 100,000 years if we go back in history. So the point is, we shouldn't be surprised by this. And if nothing else, please don't be surprised 10 years from now when it happens again. We never know when it's going to happen. And so the point is, these are opportunities. These are opportunities to reinvent yourself, to, like you said, do a lot of weeding, get really clear. And so I would suggest a couple of things. I would suggest, number one, like we talked about already, get back to your core, get really clear on your vision, know your core values, know your 10-year target, know who you are as a business. What are you genetically encoded to do? At the end of the day, what are you great at? Number two, I urge you to get as close to your customers and clients as humanly possible, and just give, help, teach, because it's these times that market share is gained. They remember the people that help them in the tough times more than they do in the good times. And then number three is then just get to work with that clear vision and with clarity around who you are and what you are and a clear message. Just get to work and sell and market your ass off. I mean, these are the times, the pie got smaller, but you can still get a larger piece of that pie. And so you just got to go get the piece of the pie that you want and need. Wow, a lot of people are getting a little lazy right now, frankly. So there's opportunity out there.
Oh yeah. I mean, people are like saying that they've watched all of Netflix. I was like, I like Netflix like anything, but like that comes after everything else.
Here.
You didn't break Netflix, you broke your business.
Here. And again, this thing is horrible, and but it's been 2 months now, so it's time to get back. Wherever you're working from, it's time to get back at it. And again, we could look at 08 and 09, and we could look at 9/11, and we could look at the .com crash, and this shit happens. Crises happen, and it's we got to rise up. That's what we do.
Yeah, I found so I started my agency in '99, right in the .bomb.
Mm-hmm.
And then we kept growing through all the major downturns. This is the best time to grow and scale. And I told everybody, I didn't know this crap was coming, but I was like, dude, the market's going to change. You gotta prepare. And
what I would share, so that your audience doesn't think we're sitting here talking theory. I started my business. I started EOS Worldwide during the .com crash as well, so we've got a lot in common there. And so I had sold the family business going into that. I was a millionaire by 31. My goal was to be a millionaire by 30. And then that .com crash, I lost everything. And I was starting a brand new business. I was $200,000 in debt. Highly risky investments. I was one of the idiots putting money into all those .coms. And so, you can survive these things. I had a 5-year-old, an 8-year-old, a mortgage payment. Thank God, a supportive wife. So you can survive, everybody.
So let's talk about that, right? Because that's interesting. Because a lot of times once people acquire what they have as some wealth, right? Or they've built a business up. Maybe they're not millionaires yet. That's perfectly fine. Whatever numbers in your head, they get so protective, and they literally won't walk down the street because they're afraid they're going to get hit by a car. So talk about because a lot of people, when they lose, I remember a lot of my friends that, they sold businesses for a ton of money around then, and then they lost everything. And a lot of them just never recovered. So what was that mentality? I always treat it as like a Monopoly game. You can always start over. It's a new game. This is all just a game.
Yeah, no, I agree. And this is a fun conversation, and potentially a debate, again, with the audience listening, because we're all different in how we react to these things. And so to me, it's all about risk tolerance and survival mode. I am a fighter. I'm from Detroit. We're fighters, we're gritty. And so the way that I look at it is, I have a hard time resting on my laurels and being content. Okay. And so I'm very, very, very driven. And this may not be fair to somebody who's not driven. And so if you did make your millions and you want to go right off in the sunset and sit on a beach, you know, mine is not to judge that. All I can do is speak from my standpoint. And so, yes, I got my ass kicked in 2000 with the dot-com crash, and I pulled out of that. There was 08, 09, you know, my business took a 40% hit then. And so that was scary, but having turned the family business around, which was sheer hell, having gone through dot-com crash and losing everything, which was sheer hell, 08 and 09, you start to build, you know, calluses around these things. And so what I'm able to do is just very quickly put in place a crisis plan, a survival plan, look at the bare bones, you know, can I survive this thing? And then I put a plan in place and I go forward. And just like with this, you know, I built EOS Worldwide over 20 years. We successfully sold that business. You know, I still own 12.5%. I still own all the books. But with that, even in this state that I'm in, I still put in place a survival plan 4 days into this crisis so that I knew what does the worst case scenario look like. And you know, regardless of how much money I have, I'm a driven guy. I want to continue to grow. I can't imagine. I mean, the thought, I wish I knew what contentment felt like. Okay. I hear it's nice, but for those that, you know, are comfortable, you know, sitting on a beach, amen and hallelujah. For those of us that are driven, we just keep charging forward, and you got to decide which one you are and create a life around that. So hopefully that answers your question, because I gave you kind of a big context there.
Oh yeah, no, it's just, the biggest point I want everybody listening to know is if you lose everything, it's okay. You can restart. I don't want the fear of losing to stop you. And I'm just like you, Gina. When I sold my business, you know, after 2 weeks, I was like, holy cow, I am bored. I am depressed. I need to go do something. And like, I was just like, I need to get back at something. And I just I didn't know what I needed to get back into until like 2 years later, until this business actually found me. And so and I found what I wanted was that significance, that contribution that you have as well about all the content you guys put out. Now you've already kind of talked about some of the disciplines in your new book, you know, obviously clarify your visions, one, but you have one, deciding if you're a person.
Yeah.
What is that? I think I know what you're talking about there.
Yeah, that's great. And as I go into answering that, I want to touch on two things you said that will be helpful for your audience.
Might have lost.
Jason, can you hear me? Jason?
Going though.
Can you hear me, Jason?
Yes.
Yeah, you were sputtering through that whole dissertation you said. So again, I trust you'll edit this, and I'm going to pick up right with what you said there. And so, you know, in answering that question, I want to back up 2 steps with something you said, because, you know, I'm a teacher at heart. And so I think there's a learning opportunity for your audience here. And so I want to share it. You know, so the first thing you said, you know, selling your business and being bored. You know, one of the things I did when I sold my business is I put in place a succession plan over 5 years, and I knew what my next passion and project was going to be. And so when I sold, the day I closed on the business, nothing changed in my life, because there was already a leadership team in place and I was on to my next passion. And so I would urge that for all of your listeners, number one. Number two, you know, your point about there's hope, you know, you can get out of this thing. By all means, please hear that. And one of the things I teach and prescribe in this new book, and we teach it in EOS as well, is 10-year thinking, 10-year target, have a 10-year goal. And so what I would urge is, please understand, you know, we're all going through hell right now, but there's light at the end of this tunnel. Have a 10-year goal. Think in 10-year timeframes. You will pull out of this damn thing. And so please be thinking long-term, in addition to doing short-term actions. To then get to your next point about partners. So what I teach, one of the things I teach in the book is, the book is called Entrepreneurial Leap, and I take the reader through 3 phases or 3 parts: confirm, glimpse, and path. First, confirming that they even are an entrepreneur. Glimpse is showing them the life. Path is then showing them how to greatly increase their odds. And one of the things I teach in there are 8 disciplines. And one of those disciplines you're talking about is, are you a partner person? Is knowing whether or not you're a partner person. And so in all of my work in helping thousands of entrepreneurs, I've helped many partnerships unwind, and these people should have never partnered. And so there's three types of people in the world, three types of entrepreneurs, three types of business owners. The first type is a partner person, where you should have partners. You need to have partners. And there's two types of partnerships. One is where you still have controlling interest, but you give people equity in your business. You still want to have the ultimate decision-making power, but you're comfortable sharing the wealth. You're comfortable having people sharing that. That's the kind of entrepreneur and business owner I am, and that's the way I've always done it. Number two is a partner person that is comfortable having equal share. And so if there are two of you, it's 50-50. If there are three of you, it's a third, and a third, but you all have equal voting rights and you're comfortable being true partners. And then there's the third type that should never, ever, ever, never have a partner. And there's no bad answer in any one of those three scenarios. You just have to know which one you are, because I can show you hundreds of examples of each of those three scenarios, wildly successful entrepreneurs. And so there's nothing written that says you have to have partners. There's nothing written that says you have to give away equity. There are tremendously successful entrepreneurs that own it all. And so you just have to decide which one you are, because if you're not a partner person and you get a partner, you are going to be unwinding that relationship. And it's really hard to do when you're generating 5 million in revenue and there's money. So anyway, there's that discipline.
Do you see people changing over the years? Like I was perfectly fine when we were running our agency in the very beginning, and maybe even toward the middle of splitting the wealth.
Yeah.
But then as my contribution kept growing and I felt like the business was outgrowing certain people,
yeah,
I felt like I moved into stage 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or stage 1 from what you.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, no partners.
So that's you learning from previous battle wounds potentially. So I would say, short answer to your question, yes. I mean, you could evolve and change. And I don't know if it's called evolving or changing, it's learning. But I would suggest with what you learn now and where you are, the whole idea behind this book that I wrote is hindsight being 2020. I'm trying to help people have a glimpse and see the future so they can make great decisions now. And so I would wonder and challenge, have you always been a person who should not have partners? But with that, let's not debate that. And I'll just say, yes, it can change over time, but just know going into any business arrangement, any business you start out there, there's three types, and you got to decide which type you are right now at this moment, or you're going to make a really stupid mistake. Because on the other side, there are people that have to have partners. With all due love and respect, you're just not the kind of person that can go this thing alone, 100% ownership. And so share a little bit of wealth. So again, you just got to know which one you are.
Yeah. I see a lot of people partnering within their agencies or joining agencies together because they think it's a quicker path, because there's some big unknown and they feel like inadequate in certain divisions. And I always tell them, I'm like, look, you can look for groups. You can look for a board of advisors that can help you with this.
Yes.
You don't have to give up ownership. It's like, I love watching Shark Tank, and Mr. Wonderful is always like, I don't want to take ownership in your company. I just want to get paid a royalty.
Right. Yeah. And so on that, I was just mentoring a woman who's building this amazing organization of virtual assistants, and investors approached her. And thank God in about 22 minutes, I was able to convince her, not convince her, but I just knew her based on the questions I asked. There was no good reason for her to give up equity in her business. And so thank God she saw clearly, why on earth would I partner with these people, take these people's money? I'm doing just fine. And to your exact point, instead of anything, form an advisory board, get mentors. There are other ways to get that knowledge that you think you're getting when you give up some piece of your company. So kudos to you on that awareness.
Yeah. What are some other disciplines that can really help the listeners grow?
Yeah, well, for sure. So I want to be careful not to read the whole book to you, but
we won't mind.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd be happy to do that if we have 3 hours. I'll just start from page 1 and go. But here's what I'd love to do, because, we're talking to agency owners or people who are thinking about starting an agency. And one of the things I really hope to talk about is whether or not you should even have employees. And some of you shouldn't, and many of you should, and we'll talk about that. But what we're talking about right now is when you take your entrepreneurial leap, there are 8 disciplines to increase your odds of success. And one of those was obviously decide if you're a partner person. I'm going to quickly rip through the other 7. And Jason, what I would love you to do, knowing your audience, you tell me which one you think is the highest gain. And so the remaining 7 are to clarify your vision, know that the bigger the problem you solve in the world, the more successful you will be. Get feedback from customers and clients early and often. Know that your first plan will not be your final plan. Work hard, really hard. Take criticism and doubt from others with a grain of salt, and see it every night. So you tell me which one jumps out at you.
The feedback. I think a lot of us struggle with feedback. And adapting, right?
Yeah, you better believe it. So I'll start by saying get good at it, because what great entrepreneurs do, if you're planning on being around for decades, is they constantly evolve. So with all due love and respect, the product or the service you're delivering right now will not be the same product and service 5 years from now. And the only way you're going to make that change on a dime and not let the competition kick your ass is to stay as close to keeping your ear to the ground as possible. Listen to your customers and clients. Find out exactly what their needs are so that you can adjust as soon as their needs change. And so you need to know them better than they know themselves. And then there's a great Henry Ford quote, Ford Motor Company. And the other thing he says, if I'd listened to everything that my clients wanted, I would have, given them a faster horse. So the other reality is when you know your customers better than they know themselves, sometimes you see what they need before they see what they need. And all of a sudden you're 3 steps ahead of not only your competition, but your customers and clients. And it just enables you to keep providing value. I created EOS over a 5-year period by locking myself in a session room with my clients and just asking them questions and prescribing solutions. And until 5 years, 500 sessions in, I perfected the model for helping an entrepreneur get everything they want out of their business. I could not have created that in a day. And I created it because I listened to my client and what their needs were.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like what we did with the agency playbook framework. It was just, people think we created it in like a year, but it took 12 years in the agency. And then it took 5 years after the agency to really put it all together to figure out like, what are the things in like a waterfall that have to happen first, right? Like kind of, a lot of people always tell us that EOS and the playbook are very similar because I tell everybody it's because it works.
Well, and I would not only suggest that, I would say it works because what we're doing is we're managing human energy, okay? And with all due love and respect, there hasn't been something new created in the last 500 years. And so you are savvy enough to understand how human energy works inside of a business. I'm savvy enough to understand how human energy works in a business. And so we create tools that help manage that human energy. And that's what you're doing. That's what I'm doing. Potato, we call it different things. It's been renamed 1,000 times. It's not rocket science, but for those of us that see patterns and trends, we're able to help these entrepreneurs see what they're not seeing contextually.
Switching focus a little bit, there's a lot of people, and you mentioned this a little while ago about content, or maybe because there's a lot of people listening that are at the multi-million level, and they've been hitting the ceiling, right? They're just like bang, bang, bang. And they just can't figure out how to, like, what do they need to do? Like, what's next? Yeah. And like, I know you said plan out 10 years. For me, it's hard, man. Like, I don't know where I want to be in 10 years. Like, right. Like, I just do what I want to have fun. And I think there's a lot of people like that. So how can someone break that glass ceiling that is already in people's eyes, contributing, they're successful, but they're just not getting to the next level because maybe because they don't know the next level.
Well, so I would say there's so much packed in that question. I love it. So I'm going to try and say just 2 things, but I want to say 3. And so hopefully this will help answer it. So the first, I would say is, it's called 10-year thinking. Okay. And the 10-year, idea and discipline is just to know where you want to land 10 years from now. It's not about a detailed plan. That's a mistake. That's impossible. The world's going to be so different 10 years from now. Who knows? But what's the dent you want to put in the universe? What's the goal? I.e. then 10-year thinking. And 10-year thinking says every decision you make today, be thinking out 10 years. You'll make much better decisions. Time slows down. You become more patient. You make better decisions. And you ironically get there twice as fast. I learned it at 35 and God, it served me well. So that's the first point. Second point, this glass ceiling, it's really important, okay? And so again, 3 parts to the book: confirm, glimpse, path, and I want to keep anchoring each question. And so this is now in the glimpse part of the book. And what I'm teaching here is you've got to know as an entrepreneur what you're built for, what you're drawn to, because not every entrepreneur is built to build a billion-dollar company, a billion-dollar agency. And so some of you listening should never go past being a freelancer, with all due love and respect. And some of you should go build a 500-person agency, and then we've got everybody in between. And so the glass ceiling, sometimes it's not a glass ceiling. Sometimes you have gone past your point of capacity. You've gone past what you really desire. And so I'm going to give you 2 types of people. Okay. And so let's talk about the first one that's hitting the ceiling, that probably should just have a 5-person agency and just have this wonderful lifestyle agency, 5 people. They have it dialed in. They're doing amazing work. They're making a ton of profit. They're going to retire just nicely. Amen and hallelujah to that. Then there's the person that's hitting the glass ceiling that wants to go to 100 people in their agency. They're at 5. That's a whole different conversation. From there, now we need to teach them and give them tools. But that person needs to take a big step back, get really clear on their vision in terms of what they really want. That person needs to put in place a structure for their organization to get them to the next level. That person needs to start delegating and elevating stuff that they're doing, getting the right people in the right seats. And so, everything we're talking about here is all EOS and traction stuff, and certainly the stuff you teach. This new book, Entrepreneurial Leap, for that person sitting there, as a freelancer deciding to grow, that will help them and give them the tools, but you got to go get the tools to grow. But those 3 things I just shared is, quite frankly, 80% of the battle.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I remember hearing something about a guy, he was, all he wanted to do was go fishing every day.
Here. Oh, I know the story well.
Right. And he kept working his butt off, like over and over. And then he could have just went fishing like right then.
Right. In the story, if you remember, he's talking to a guy that's, fishing every day, and he wants to go fishing every day. And so he talks about building this empire so he can go fish every day. And the guy that was fishing every day just fished every day. So and we're all different. So that's why you got to know your vision. You got to know your motivation. And for those of us with the 6 essential traits of a true entrepreneur, we can't help ourselves but to drive and grow and build companies. And there's no right or wrong answer here. It's about knowing thyself and then going forward from there.
Awesome. Well, this has all been great, Gino. Is there anything I did not ask you that you think would benefit these great agency owners listening?
Yeah, the one thing I really want to make sure is made clear here is there is something I call the entrepreneurial range. And we've kind of touched on this multiple different ways, but now I want to paint a picture and create a context in the mind of all of your listeners. And so the entrepreneurial range, if you picture this arc, on that arc are all self-employed people. But on the far left-hand side are the one-person shows. And so these are your freelancers we've been talking about, consultants, anybody that is basically self-employed, but they're on their own. And then on the other side of that range and spectrum are what I call true entrepreneurs. And if you go all the way to the right side, they're the greatest entrepreneurs of all time. And so you picture, like we said, Henry Ford, Walt Disney, Oprah Winfrey, Sarah Blakely, Thomas Edison. And so every self-employed person is somewhere on that range. Well, the right half of that range is what I'm teaching and helping to create awareness around. And so the people on the right end of that range have 6 essential traits. Very quickly: visionary, passionate, problem solver, driven, risk taker, and responsible. And I've created an assessment for you to decide if you have those traits at e-leap.com. It's free. It'll take you 10 minutes. But the point I'm making here is you have to decide where you are on that range. And like I said, for some of you, you just need to stay on that far left range. Just be a freelancer. You can make 6 figures. You can retire off that in 20 years. There's no shame in that. But for those of you that really possess these traits, you are these hard charging entrepreneurs that you can't help but build organizations and put a dent in the universe, and just know that about yourself, know where you are on that range, and then go forward. And so that's the context I would love to leave your audience with.
Awesome. What's the website address again so they can go there?
Yep, e-leap.com, and that's the epicenter for everything. They can find the book there, 9 free tools, lots of great stuff. So go have at it and have a blast.
Awesome. Well, if you guys enjoyed this episode and you want to be surrounded by amazing agency owners, maybe you don't want to partner with someone else, maybe you need that advisors where we can actually see what you're doing and guide you in the right direction, where the members are actually constantly sharing what's working and what's not working and seeing the shit that you can't see. I would love to invite all of you to go to digitalagencyelite.com and go check it out, and it might be right for you, and we'll have a discussion. So until next time, have a swank day.